Hello and welcome to the first video here on the Geek, your channel for geek and gaming stuff from a queer perspective, or queer stuff from a geek perspective. Anyways, I always very much liked space games. The first space game I really got hooked on was Freelancer, which gave you an amazing openness in a time when open world was still in its infancy and many games still had canyon-like missions. There was one right way and you had to go down that way. They were only interrupted by some cutscenes, maybe, but yeah, that basically was it. Freelancer on top of that had a cool story and loads of ships, planets and possibilities to earn your living. You could be an upright citizen, you could be a rogue, bounty hunter, whatever you like to be, and still could follow the storyline more or less. That didn't factor in. Since then, I sunk many uncounted hours into space games of many different genres, but very few brought me the feeling I had when I started playing Freelancer as a kid. Either the choices were a bit too limited, or the universe lacked story, flavor, or even just a bit of variety. Looking at you, Elite Dangerous. So I naturally was very excited when I first learned about Bethesda's new RPG, Starfield, being set in space. And while I hoped for a superior Outer Worlds, the new gameplay reveal really blew my mind. The trailer now has been out for some days and I had a chance to look closely at some screenshots, to go full on conspiracy theorist mode and come up with some hopefully not too crazy assumptions of what the shown parts of Starfield can tell us about the mechanics and features of the game. I've broken down my findings and hypotheses in these categories. First, the character. Second, on-foot gameplay. Third, in-space gameplay and planets. Fourth, ship design. Fifth, base building, crafting and research. Sixth, factions and story. And seventh, speculations. I've decided to give each of these categories their own video. Otherwise, this video would become way too long. Yeah, but that's enough preamble for me. Let's just jump right into it and start with the first category, character. As Starfield will be an RPG, the focus will lie very strongly on the character, so I think this is a good starting point for my breakdown. I also think this is the point where it becomes the most obvious why comparisons with No Man's Sky won't fit very well. Of course, there are certain mechanics in Starfield that will be quite similar or have similar solutions, so far we can see it now, to No Man's Sky's base building, for example. But in the essence, No Man's Sky is a survival and base building game with exploration parts in it. Whilst these things are also features in many RPGs made by Bethesda, it's not the main course. It's not the meat and potatoes of the Bethesda games. So yeah, let's face it. In No Man's Sky, the character is so unimportant as an individual that they don't even have a name or any other recognizable feature. We don't even know what gender they have, from which species they are. We don't know anything. We just see a suit. But let's start with the first screenshot. We see here the character customization start. It's where we meet for the first time our character, where our character is being created, where our journey with our character essentially begins. It is very similar to the way you start out in Skyrim or Fallout 4. We choose a rough preset of looks for our characters, from which we then can customize the looks of our character further. No surprises here, but as the saying goes, don't fix it if it isn't broken. I think choosing a rough type first and then going from there is quite a neat time saver in the character customator. We want to have exactly the character we would like to have, but especially in the first games, I tend to get very conflicted between wanting to experience the real gameplay as soon as possible and having the character I want to have. So, in my eyes, it's a good system. I really like the UI of the character creation menu. It just looks very polished. You get very fast a grasp on what's going to happen when, especially for a new player. I think it will be very easy to pick up what's going to happen now. The UI for that in Fallout 4 in comparison I found very unfortunate. The whole thing of practically looking in the mirror and deciding through that how we look is a nice idea, but the execution was a bit wanting. Not very intuitive, especially with buttons changing their purpose between different customization categories. I hope they fixed that latter part for Starfield. We also see we have 5 stages for the customization: biometric ID, body, face, so far no surprises, then background and traits, which the two latter are quite a new thing for Bethesda games. We also see on the bottom left that we have an employee number. On the top left we see Argus extractors, which sounds to me like like a mining corporation. And on the right we have a logo which also looks quite corporation-esque with an A and an E. So I think it's safe to assume we start out as an employee of Argus extractors. Probably while starting out we should fill in our personal records for their employee records, something like this. Yeah, it's neat how Bethesda always integrates the character creation in some form of narrative already. Two things I find pretty notable right from the get-go. First is the little explanation that we will be able to customize our looks in every detail later on again. So no matter what we choose now, we can change it later on when visiting a genetics facility, which I think is a very neat for new players of Bethesda games in general. The system is new, at least Skyrim had it too, and I think even Fallout 3 and New Vegas, but the latter two I haven't played in quite a while, so please don't quote me on that. But so far we only got to know that when we already had at least 1 or 2 hours invested in the game, so I find this note very nice. You can fully create a character that represents your starting point and not be so generic that it will fit any changes your character might undergo during the journey you embark on, which I always find pretty limiting and was something that very strongly hampered my enjoyment of Cyberpunk 2077, for example. A game in which individualism, fast-changing trends, and extreme body modification is at the very core of the culture, and you, up until now when this video was recorded, can still just make superficial changes to the appearance of your character after creation. You can't even change tattoos. It just is a joke in my eyes, but yeah, very. Oh yeah, the second thing is that there doesn't seem to be any method in choosing the sex or gender of the character, and that doesn't change in the other 4 categories, which makes me as a non-binary person pretty excited. My theory is that there is no binary divide anymore between male or female optics for the character, so the gender presentation of the character might become just one of the other categories of customization. In that case, you might start out with a male character, but during your journey your character comes out as a trans woman, you visit the next genetic facility and undergo a medical transition. I personally would find that a very elegant way to include trans people. Also, as the developers confirmed that there will be no spoken voice for the player character, so no problems here with having to explain why the voice sounds different now and all that jazz, so no problem here. My guess would be that when you finish the character customization, when you would type in the name, how it's common in Bethesda games, maybe you can choose the pronouns for your character there, and by which essentially how you will be addressed by the NPCs in the game later on. I really would love to see something like that, with maybe even 3 options, male, female, and and non-binary. But I do recognize that that can create some problems for heavily gendered languages like French, Spanish, or my mother's tongue German. But as Star Trek Discovery tackled that in their German synchro very well, I at least see it as a possibility. And Bethesda offers, at least since Skyrim, same gender relationships and romances. And since Fallout 4, you can dress even your male character with dresses that are made for females, so you don't have this thing like in Skyrim where there is one male version and a female version of every cloth. I see it in the realm of the possible that this could be something Bethesda is implementing in the game, as they already have made some steps towards inclusion of queer people in their former games. And just looking back, Fallout 4 released in 2015, when having gay characters still was something new, was something that not every game had. Now we are at a very different point. That's not a discussion or a big exciting thing that a game now has even a gay character. It is by now, for role-playing games, more or less expected that you have some queer representation. And Skyrim even released much earlier, in 2011, I think, and then this was quite something the queer community was pretty excited about, that you can do that in Skyrim. So yeah, I'm very excited how this plays out and whether I'm correct with my theory here. Here now we see the body customization. I find it pretty neat that we see our entire character here on the right, big enough to have a good overview on the changes we implement on our character, but not too big, so we still have a good overview to our options, something that I think will be quite beneficial on the upcoming handheld gaming device for PC games, if Starfield will be compatible with them. But I guess, at least for the Microsoft One, this might be an option, as Bethesda has been bought by Microsoft recently. On the top left, we can create how thin, heavy, or muscular our character should be. At first I was a bit confused about the 5 dots, but I would say that that 3 of them mark the extremes for either of the 3 categories. One is just the middle, and the last one is indicating what we are currently selecting. I would have wished for that the selecting dot is a bit different, so we can tell the difference fast, but I guess it's superficial. We will get what it is doing very fast. I think it's not rocket science. In principle, it is the same as in Fallout 4, but with a nicer visual representation, and with it being a circle, it might or might not give more variation than in a triangle. But it could also just be a visual thing, as circles are the reappearing theme in the design of Starfield. Directly beneath, we can select the body type, which looks on the first glance a bit odd, as we can create the body very fast and detailed with the body build dial above, unless my hypothesis regarding sex and gender in the game is correct. Then we would choose here whether our character should have a more masculine or feminine body, instead of choosing the body pronouns and everything else as a package. Especially if we look at the field directly below that, which selects the walk style of our character. Also something that was in earlier games selected by the sex gender selection. This reminds me very much on how that is done in the Create a Sim mode for Sims 4, which in my opinion has one of the best character creation systems when it comes to gender variety and creating characters that don't fit too much gender stereotypes, but you have very free option. As this isn't just interesting for trans people like me, but it also frees the character of gender stereotypes for cis people. After all, many women don't walk with a hip swing, and some men do. Just for example, the last category is skin tone, which is pretty self-explanatory. Next up is the face creation, which doesn't present anything we haven't seen in other games, besides that it looks like we will have quite a number of options. More than 14 hair colors, and the second hairstyle still being so much on the left of the bar indicates to me that there is quite a number of styles to choose from. Also, the details of the hair and eyelashes looks pretty amazing, I have to say. This looks really, really good. And now we are at a section we haven't seen in recent Bethesda games so far: backgrounds. The developers said that they refrained from such options in the past to not block the freedom of players to tell their own stories, though they have seen that many other modern RPGs have found solutions that didn't block this freedom and lend the character much more, well, character. But if we are honest, especially Fallout always gave you a background that was just fixed. In Fallout 3, you grew up in the vault and were then banished, and you go on a quest to find your father. In New Vegas, you are a courier in the Mojave Desert, though this gives you the least background in the modern Fallout franchise. And in Fallout 4, you are a parent to Sean, and if you selected the male option, you are a veteran of the Sino-American War and venture on to find your lost son, which is an interesting inversion of Fallout 3, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, these backgrounds don't have a big impact on your skills or stats in the game, but still it pretty much impedes the free storytelling of the player. In Fallout 4, you are always a parent. You have been married in a hetero marriage from which you are widowed. So I greatly appreciate that we now get a say in choosing our own background. So far, we know of 16 backgrounds: Beast Hunter, Bouncer, Bounty Hunter, Chef, Combat Medic, Cyber Runner, Cyberneticist, Diplomat, Explorer, Gangster, Homesteader, Industrialist, Longhauler, Pilgrim, Professor, and Ronin. The scroll bar here, though, leads me to believe that there might even be a few more backgrounds to choose from. The first background we get showcased in detail is the Chef. While the unrefined masses scarf down chunks by the shipload, you catered to those with a more discerning palate. In your kitchen, countless alien species became true culinary masterpieces. Starting skills are gastronomy. You can craft specialty food and drinks and research additional recipes at the research lab. The research lab we will see later on. It's, I think, a very nice feature that's implemented here. Dueling. Melee weapons do 10% more damage. Yeah, as gastronomy, both skills are pretty self-explanatory, pretty logical for a chef. Wellness. Immediately gain 30 points of health. This sounds to me a bit random. I know many chefs that aren't that healthy or well, but okay, yeah. It gives you a good start, I think. I appreciate very much that we get 3 starting skills for each background. Our past experience and our education gives us different skill sets in life, so starting with completely blank slate doesn't make that much of sense to me. Also in difference to how backgrounds impacted the gameplay in most older RPGs, which just gave us +2 in dexterity, -1 on charisma, and +1 on strength. But it gives us very distinctive skills that we otherwise would have to put time and effort into to gain. On top of that, I guess the chef would be a very interesting choice if Starfield gets a survival mode like Fallout 4 has one, in which the preparation of food and the acquisition of otherwise unobtainable food sources can really make a difference, especially in the start of the game. So, interesting choice. I also like the text to it. But I don't know whether I would want to eat at the restaurant of this chef. Next is the Combat Medic. Leave it to human beings to fight over something as infinite as outer space. That's where you come in. You've never been afraid to take on the enemy, but you'd much rather take care of your friends. Starting skills, pistol certification. Pistols do 10% more damage. Medicine, medpacks heal 10% more. Weightlifting, increase total carrying capacity by 10 kilograms. These skills look quite logical for combat medic, very sensible. I also like the light tongue-in-cheek on the background text. Very nice, but I didn't expect anything different from the people who made Fallout to be quite humorous again. Yeah, pistol certification is a support role, more or less, makes sense. Medicine, of course. Weightlifting, yeah, you might need some extra strength to carry your wounded comrade. I don't think this will be a real feature, but carrying a few medpacks more can make a difference between life and death. So, yeah, nice and sensible. Next up is the Cyber Runner. From Neon to New Atlantis, the megacorps stand as monuments to power, prestige, and profit. You've worked both for and against them, on the inside and out, often sacrificing conscience for credits. Starting skills, pistol certification, pistols do 10% more damage. Security, you can attempt to hack advanced locks and 2 auto attempts can be banked. Persuasion, gain an increased chance of success on speech challenges. The security skill sounds interesting to me. It implies to me that what was in Fallout 4 in 2 skills, lockpicking and hacking, is now one and the same, which does make sense to me, as in the game world, mechanical locks would have been long replaced by digital ones. But we will have a look on this mechanic in the on-foot gameplay section of my breakdown in detail, where we will see what this exactly means. The persuasion skill hints clearly to the new dialogue system that will reintroduce speech challenges from the Elder Scrolls series. Though we haven't seen that feature yet in a showcase, the developers said they wanted to create a system that doesn't give you a right option in conversations and a wrong one, so each time you start a new game, the same conversation with the same NPC will go a different way, even if you take the same options like in the game before. So it will never look like you're just watching a rerun of an old show, but it gives you a difference in every replay. How they do that in detail, I don't know. I haven't seen it in action yet, so I'm very excited to learn more about that feature. The Cyberneticist. Robots, mere toys. Know your arms? Good for parlor tricks. The colony war may have made implants and upgrades available to veterans, but you once saw a greater future. Humans and machines as one. Starting skills? Medicine. Medpacks heal 10% more. Robotics. You deal 10% more damage to robots and turrets. Lasers. Laser weapons do 10% more damage. I think the skill set is nothing too wild, pretty self-explanatory. The whole part of implants makes me question whether we will be able to improve our character with implants, not so extensive as in Cyberpunk 2077, but maybe like in Shadowrun games with certain stats improving, some optic things, maybe that. But maybe it's just world building fluff that has nothing really to say. We will see at least some optic representation of prosthetic arms and legs. Also would be very cool and would be a nice inclusion of characters with mobility impairments. The text in any case is nice, not towards transhumanism. I really like that. And this is the last background that is showcased in detail in this trailer. The Diplomat. The wars are over. Peace now reigns the settled systems, but only because there are those quietly fighting to keep it. Because of you, agreements were signed, words were heeded, lives were spared. Starting skills, persuasion, you know that one. Diplomacy, you can force a target NPC at or below your level to stop fighting for a while. Bargaining buy items for 5% less and sell them for 10% more. Quite a sensible skill set for Diplomat in my opinion. So yeah, I'm pretty excited on what the other backgrounds will give us for skill sets, especially Beast Hunter and Bounty Hunter. I really, the Bounty Hunters are just a sci-fi evergreen for me. Yeah, and that were the backgrounds. So let's move on to the next category, the traits. So traits, also something very new for Bethesda games. It reminds me very much of the system The Sims 4 is using. You are choosing you have to choose 3 traits and combine them. They give you some minor advantages and limitations, and I think much more flavor to our character. It gives them more of a personality, I would say. In combination with the backgrounds, we really have a great range of combinations that are possible here. For both traits as well as backgrounds, I would be surprised if we would get more of them in coming DLCs and other extensions that the developers already have confirmed that they will come. How many and how big they will be, we will see, but we've seen some interesting stuff in the DLCs for Skyrim and Fallout 4, so yeah, I'm excited. Again, we see 16 traits, but the scroll bar again hints for me that there is at least one other trait we can't see yet. The traits are Alien DNA, Empath, Extrovert, Freestar Collective Settler, Introvert, Kid Stuff, Neon Street Rat, Race Enlightened, Race Universal, Serpent's Embrace, Spaced, Starter Home, Taskmaster, Terra Firma, United Colonies, Native, Unwanted Hero. The first trait we can see in detail is the Introvert. You really need your alone time. You have more endurance when adventuring alone, but less when adventuring with other human companions. Can't be combined with Extrovert. Yeah, quite sensible. So there obviously will be traits that are mutually excluding each other, and I find it cool that as introvert you're bothered by human company, you thrive when you're alone, but if you have, for example, the robot from the trailers as a companion, you don't get the advantages, but you also don't get the disadvantages. So, yeah, neat. The second trait is Kid Stuff. Your parents are alive and well. You can visit them at their home, but 10% of all the money you earn is deducted automatically and sent to them. I find it particularly funny that you have to give them 10% of everything you earn, and I wonder whether this has any form of impact on how lavish the home of your parents will become over time. Well, we'll see. I would find it very nice if we had some form of small side quest we have to do for them, like running errands or something like this. Something you're going on great adventures in space, but when you come home, you're still a child more or less and have to go on errands for your parents. I would find that a bit funny. I also wonder whether the religious traits and faction allegiance traits we will come to in a minute will have an impact on the parents, as they all have to do with where you come from and how you were raised. So I would find it just natural that if we were raised universal, that there are some symbols of the universal church in the home of our parents or something like this. So yeah. Neon Street Rat. You grew up on the mean streets of Neon. You gain access to special dialogue options and better rewards from some missions on Neon. Crime bounty by other factions is greatly increased. Can't be combined with any other faction allegiance trait. So this is the first faction allegiance trait we get to see, and I would hazard the guess that this is the allegiance trait for the Crimson Fleet pirate faction, as we currently now just know about the 3 factions of the Crimson Fleet, the Freestar Collective, and the United Colonies. Though in some of the Into the Starfield videos, the developers made hints to a mega corporation being another faction, though we have no further confirmation of that and haven't seen anything like that, so it just could be a minor group you can interact with and go on missions for, but without it being a fully fledged faction, just another group that's out there where you can have a good standing or bad standing, and yeah, something like this. Like in Skyrim, where you, whilst the cities weren't factions on their own, you could be on a good standing with the population of the city or not, and that impacted on how well you were treated or how the Jarl of the particular city saw you, and that impacted, of course, whether you could buy a player's home there, or how much you had to pay in the stores and how much you got for things you were selling in the stores. Maybe something like this. And with that, we come to our first religious trait: raised enlightened. You grew up as a member of the Enlightened. You gain a significant discount at the organization store, but lose access to Sanctum Universum store. Can't be combined with any other religion trait. This raises a few questions for me. How much do these religious organizations factor in the gameplay? Do we maybe even have some side quests for them? Also, the organization store makes me wonder what kind of things we can buy or sell there when they mention it so explicitly. Our second religious trait: raised universal. You grew up as a member of the Sanctum Universum. You gain a significant discount at the church store, but lose access to the Enlightened store. Can't combine with any other religion trait. Yeah. What I find interesting here is that is called a church, whilst the Enlightened is called an organization. So it could be that the Enlightened is a philosophical atheistic group, and the Universal Church is a more classical theistic church, which also would make sense that you lose access to the respective other shop if you are part of either of them. Which also makes me wonder whether you can join one of the groups later on, even if you don't have one of the religious traits. The last religious trait we see is the Serpent's Embrace. You grew up worshipping the Great Serpent. Graph jumping provides a temporary boost to health and endurance, but health and endurance are lowered if you don't continue jumping regularly, like an addiction. Can't be combined with any other religion trait. So you are addicted to graph jumping, and graph jumping is part of your religion. That sounds interesting. It also sounds pretty culty to me. It gives some slight Children of the Atom vibes, but this time worshipping some space leviathan or something like that. I really am stoked to learn more about the Great Serpent. Interesting enough, you don't lose access to the stores of the other religious groups, so maybe the cult of the Great Serpent is a secret organization, or it is more like an esoteric movement that isn't seen by the others as a real rival for mine. So yeah, who knows? I'm very excited to learn more about the Great Serpent. The next trait is called Spaced. Your body has become acclimated to space. Health and endurance are increased when in space, but decreased when on the surface. Can't be combined with terra firma. I find this trait really nice, as this is something that current day astronauts really experience, that they first have to acclimate to space, but upon their return to Earth they again have to acclimate to Earth. So quite neat, and I think it's safe to assume that the trait terra firma, that isn't showcased in this trailer, might just be the opposite of it for planet-side health and endurance. The last trait we get shown in detail is quite interesting in my eyes. It's called Starter Home. You own a small house on a peaceful little moon, but it comes with a 50,000 credit mortgage with Gullbank. My first question would be whether this is like a small homestead, like a player home, or is it an outpost, like we will see in base building later on in my breakdown. And if it is the first, will it be in some form of small settlement, or is it, I don't know. I have much questions about this, whether we have one form of small house. It's every time you pick this trade, you will have this house at the same location, or is it in a different location, maybe even in the space of different factions? There are many questions for me just by that. My second question would be to the Gull Bank. Is that just where we have our money instead of wandering around with buckets of gold coins or bottle caps? We now have an account with this bank and everything is just paid through that and we start the negative? Or is it like in GTA where we have money we have on hand and a bank account that is in the negative and we need to use that account for some things? Maybe this can even be part of some, well, maybe we have money that we gain through more illicit actions and we can't just pay it into Gullbank. Something like this would be very interesting, but I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much and go too much into conspiracy land, but I think this mentioning of Gullbank and the possibility to even be in the red with this Gullbank, very interesting. Maybe even you can get loans from this bank when you need one, and I think this is very interesting, and I will have a close look to future publications about this part, especially the whole economy part of Starfield is still a big mystery to me. But we will talk about this later in the section where we will be talking about base building and such in depth. And that concludes everything we get to see about the character creation in this gameplay reveal trailer. Unfortunately, we don't get any look on the part where we can choose the name and such. So I think this is on purpose. I think there will be some things that are surprising, are new, or maybe even still work in progress, so that we don't get to see them. And I still hope this is further confirmation of my crackpot theory about being able to have 3 forms of pronouns you can choose from, and in general have a more dynamic form of gender in creating your character. The next pictures show us the variety we can produce with the character creation and also very different clothing styles. I wonder whether the outfits will be like in Fallout 4, where everything beneath the shoulders will be seen as just one item, or whether it will be like in Skyrim or Cyberpunk 2077, where we have several clothing items we can equip on different body parts and therefore have a much greater variety and diversity in looks, not just for us but also for the NPCs that have just more parts from which they can choose and can mix and equip to have a more diverse picture in cities and such. Nevertheless, I find the styles that are chosen and the visual quality looks just amazing. I haven't expected anything different, to be honest, but it still is nice to see it. It's just very nice looking. The background seems to be some sort of small cargo hold, maybe on a ship or an outpost. It has a very pragmatic, function-centered look, and it shows the design philosophy the developers early on described as NASA punk. I really like the looks of it. Not too run down, like you see it sometimes in Star Wars or Firefly, which is a great series, but yeah. And not too shiny futury like in Star Trek. It's more like an airliner that has been in use for more than a decade, clearly signs of being used, but kept in a good condition, as clearly the life of everyone aboard relies on it functioning in the best way possible. And we also get a good look at one of the spacesuits, one of the more industrial looking ones. I'm curious whether the spacesuits will function like regular clothing or more akin to the power armor system in Fallout 4, where they can't be stored away in the inventory but exist in the game world, need repair, some sort of fuel, and can be upgraded. I would love the latter, but yeah, we will see. And here we now have the skill system. On the first glance, I would say it combines the strengths of skill UIs of Skyrim and Fallout 4. it is divided in the different skill categories like in Skyrim, whilst retaining the tile framework we know from Fallout 4, but much easier in the overview and not so cluttered. The 5 categories in which we can learn skills are physical, social, combat, science, and tech. As far as I can see, we will have 3 different stages of obtaining skills. Those that are colored in their skill category color are already obtained and can be leveled up. Then we have those that are in dark blue and white, which we haven't obtained yet, but meet the requirements to learn them, if we have a skill point to spare, that is. And last we have skill tiles that are dark blue and grey, probably those which we haven't obtained yet and we don't even fulfill the requirements to learn this skill. To level up a skill, we need to fulfill certain challenges. It is unclear to me whether we also need to succeed in a challenge to unlock a skill, but in general, I find this concept very appealing and reminds me very much of the skill system from Skyrim. Not like in Fallout 4, where you get experience points from slaughtering feral ghouls, and suddenly you know how to upgrade your power armor, which doesn't really make sense in my eyes. Yeah, so we have to shoot some. I wonder whether these different columns horizontally mean that we have, like with the Fallout 4 skill sheet, the skills for the early game on top and those for the late game on the bottom. At least it looks like that, as the most learned skills are on top and the most unavailable skills are on the bottom here. I also like the art style of the skill symbols. They look like tarot cards, but the frames of them remind me of the sabacc cards from Star Wars, which really speaks to me. And here we have the detailed overview of the skill ballistics, a pretty standard skill for an RPG, but I find it very convenient that we get such a detailed overview, and I also like these rank symbols for the skill, which look very much like officer rank symbols from Star Trek or something akin. Very nice design choice. In general, I think the whole design of the UI in Starfield, as far as we can see it now, looks just so rounded. It's so well thought out and just so put together. I really, really like it. We also can see here what I've been speaking about in an earlier snapshot, the challenges we have to fulfill for the next skill level. And with that, we come to the end of the category character and the end of this video, as it already is quite long. In the next video, we will proceed to the on-foot gameplay, which I think is the main meat and potatoes of every Bethesda gameplay, besides maybe the choices and the humor, but it is one of the core features of a Bethesda game and any RPG. So if you don't want to miss a single video of my breakdown, please subscribe to this channel, press the bell, and if you want to do me a favor, you can like this video. That would really help me. And please tell me in the comments below what you think about the features we have looked into so far, and please tell me where I've gone completely off the rails and lost myself in conspiracy land. With that, I hope you all have a really, really nice day. Ad Astra, my friends.